Topping today's news, the Bahamas celebrates Jubilee Day, the latest on construction efforts on the Grand Bahama International Airport, the taxi industry making progress revamping its image, and police continue to tackle crime head on. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. May 5th has officially been declared as Jubilee Day by Prime Minister Philip Davis. Jubilee Day is a day for the entire Bahamas to show national pride, but especially for the schools to share in a day of celebrations. Jordan Prince William was one of those schools sharing in the celebrations with a special assembly. Bringing special remarks was Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture, Mario Boleg.
50 years ago, our then leaders of the Bahamas, under the leadership of Sir Lyndon Oscar Pendleton, had a dream for our nation. A dream of an independent people, a people who would decide their own direction and set their course for their future. On July 10, 1973, after 300 years of being a colony, the Bahamas made a peaceful transition into nationhood by becoming an independent nation. Since then, as a people, we have seen great progress, triumph, and challenges. This year, we celebrate 50 years of independence, a golden jubilee as a nation and an independent people.
As the Bahamas embarks on its 50th independence, the youth minister says one of the biggest accomplishments we have acquired over the years is affording youth the opportunity to reach their dreams. He also encourages students to learn more about their Bahamian heritage and embrace it.
As a people, we are proud of the many accomplishments we have made, but one of our greatest accomplishments is making a nation where our young people, you, are able to dream and determine your own destiny as individuals. You are too also can collectively, as a nation, make us a great nation. Today, we celebrate Jubilee Day, which is a continuation of our celebrations leading up to our 50th independence celebrations this year. Today is a day to show your Bahamian pride, wear your colors, learn more about your nation's history and yourself as a people. Visit a museum or art gallery to see some of the beautiful works of art that our gifted artisans create. This, along with many other activities, is a celebration of us as an independent nation, but also of you as our future leaders, artists, historians, and builders of the Bahamas.
While in London for the King's coronation, Prime Minister Philip Davis, in a video address, reminded Bahamians of those forefathers and pioneers that helped pave the road to 50 years of independence. Today, Bahamians were encouraged to wear your national colors and join celebrations tonight at the Southern Recreation Grounds. They go until about 9 p.m.-ish. Prime Minister Philip Davis has announced that his administration would draw down $400 million from the $1 billion made available by the United Kingdom Exim Bank to develop the Grand Bahama International Airport. Prime Minister Davis revealed these plans during a question and answer period at the Caribbean Council Bahamas Investment Promotional event in London.
The Manchester Airport, the UK Exim Bank, is a true and genuine partnership which we welcome. The UK Exim Bank making available to us $1 billion to draw down on is a step in the right direction for investments. We're drawing down these $400 million, which is the redevelopment of the airport, Freeport, Bahama, which will be a green airport.
The Prime Minister goes on to say that the government is trying to make structural improvements in a way that would not increase the nation's debt. Now, as for the other projects the money will be used on, the Prime Minister says the bank must approve those other projects chosen.
It has to be a project that they could embrace and that they feel has what they call an internal rate of return that will benefit the country and its people. Now, insofar as the airport is concerned, I did indicate a number of 400 million. That I misspoke because it was really 200 million. But we've been talking about a $400 million package so as to include other airports. That has not yet been completed. So the initial drawdown will be about 200 million. We're looking at another 200 from that $1 billion allocation for the purpose of developing other airports like North Elutra, completing Exome Airport, and other airport infrastructure.
Last month, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper revealed that a $200 million Grand Bahama International Airport would be developed, transforming the facility into an international air cargo hub for the Caribbean and Latin America. The project's first phase is slated to be completed no later than the first quarter of 2025. On Monday, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Gaming Board and Control Board of the Bahamas for the exchange of information and services between both countries. Executive Chairman for the Bahamas Gaming Board, Dr. Daniel Johnson, explains what this signing means for the Bahamas.
This is a big thing for us in the Bahamas. We got 100 years of experience. We're highly regulated. Of the 193 countries in the world, there are only 6 countries that enjoy the regulatory status we have as a 40-40 nation. In the Caribbean, there are only 2 of us. And the other countries are asking us for consulting services. And one of the weaknesses of our industries, we're importers, we're consumers. We're not exporters. And so the Gaming Board is taking the position now that we're going to export some of our expertise. In the first instance, we were asked to do something with Turks and Caicos, which is our nearest neighbor, has a great history, of course, with the Bahamas. And that was a consulting service about their gaming industry. Phase 1 is complete, and we now have signed the Memorandum of Understanding to proceed with Phase 2 to assist them in their regulatory framework and getting them up to speed.
As for the lifespan for this agreement, Dr. Johnson says there is no timeline.
That MOU doesn't have a timeline on it, but we'll try to be as efficient as we can. These services tend to take a year or 18 months to complete, and it is setting up regulatory frameworks that are tailor-made to other countries who've seen what we've done in the Bahamas in gaming, online gaming, our infrastructure and systems, and assisting them to see how they can progress in their own jurisdictions.
Present at the signing was Stuart Taylor, Managing Director for Turks and Caicos Islands Gaming Control and Commissions. He gives his feedback on the agreement signed.
In the Turks and Caicos Islands Mutual Evaluation Report that was done in 2020 by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, one of the key recommendations that the report recommended was that agencies should work together to combat AML-CFT issues regionally. And in order to do that, the Turks and Caicos Islands first reached out to Bermuda. We would have executed a MOU with Bermuda, I think, in May of 2021. And after executing that memorandum, we reached out to our colleagues in the Bahamas. And we would have had intimate discussions with the Gaming Board for the Bahamas. And finally, would have now signed a memorandum of understanding with the Bahamas. What the Turks and Caicos Islands is trying to do with the memorandum of understanding, we are trying to get a better, intimate understanding of the way and how large casinos are regulated, in accordance with AML-CFT conditions. We want to pull on the Bahamas 100 years of gaming experience.
Mr. Taylor also said the MOU will be used to help foster and build capacity between both entities. After calling for the resignation of the Minister of Transport, Jobeth Kobe Davis, by Bahamas Taxicab Union President Wesley Ferguson, the two seemingly making amends as they come together, joined by the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association for the Taxi Industry Service Improvement Program. Speaking on the initiative is Minister of Transport and Housing, Jobeth Kobe Davis, who revealed the plan of action moving forward after initial meetings with stakeholders.
The tourism product is doing really well, and we want to make sure that throughout the Bahamas, the tourism that we service, and then on the other hand, the taxi union has been advocating for some time for a fair increase because even with persons getting their own taxi, they're still not seeing the benefit so much as they would wish to see because of the cost of living rising. And so we just sat together internally to find a way to bring it all under one umbrella and make sure it works for all. So we created a Rate Your Ride app, and that's going to help to survey and rate our taxi drivers, but it also helps to manage the fares that people are being charged, because the app would have indication embedded in there on what the rate should be, or an idea closely related to what it should be. So the app is going to help, and then the fare increase, also there's code of conduct. So you would have missed that presentation, because that's going to be, once it's fine-tuned, then we'll be presenting that in a larger group, inviting all the drivers. And so, of course, the press will be invited too. But that's what today was about, being able to present to them from our first initial meeting what we were able to achieve, and everything we're really trying to roll out by the summer, because we know it's going to get even more busier. And so we hope to be able to bring some level of support and give that help to them as they've been.
It was revealed that the new increase in taxi rates approved by the Minister of Transport and Cabinet gives a clear indication of actual taxi rates, something that many Bahamians and tourists have criticized as lacking a guideline. Minister Kobe Davis also mentioned that the new rates are expected to be gazetted and will be embedded in the Rate Your Ride app. President of the Bahamas Hotel and Tourism Association, Robert Sandy Sands, supports this initiative.
Can I also say that the industry supports this rate increase? There's no question that the cost of living adjustments that should have taken place over multiple years never took place. And regrettably, it put taxi drivers in the position of determining what that rate should be. Therefore, we had the disparity. There will be absolutely no question now, once these rates are gazetted, what those rates will be. And then we now have recourse to address going forward. So I just want the record to show that this isn't something that we think is being imposed under duress. This is something that the industry fully supports, because now we bring gazetted standardization of rates that can be enforced, and then there is the approach to deal with persons who abuse the established process.
As for the country's taxi union, the rate increase and assisting app is welcomed. Much of the BTCU president's critique comes from a need to alleviate these gray areas when it comes to taxi fares. However, after sitting down with the minister, there is much more clarity and a set of guidelines to taxi rates.
It has to work at this time. It has to work. There's no backing out of this now, because the union is on board with it. This is what the union have been lobbying for. So now that we have their attention, their undivided attention, we can now move ahead aggressively and revamp this industry. And this is a step in the right direction. We are happy about what's going on here. So we will make sure, hold our feet to the fire and make sure that this works. Because if you would have heard in my summary, I said enforcement is what we need. And I will make sure with every ounce of my being that enforcement is carried out in this country, so the taxi industry now we could have a better view of what the taxi driver is all about, instead of them looking at them as hustlers. These are actually ambassadors. These are self-employed people, business owners, and they ought to be perceived as such.
Mr. Ferguson says the feedback from all stakeholders that have to deal with taxi drivers in the country was all positive, adding that the meeting was a collaborative effort to mitigate all undesirable behaviors from taxi cab drivers. He said for the first time, he feels confident that the collaborative initiative will work compared to past discussions that were one-sided and filled with empty promises. Following the flooding incident that took place at the Lyndon Pinley International Airport over the weekend, and that saw a large amount of water in the international arrivals corridors, baggage storage areas, and more, Aviation Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper says officials at the airport will continue to monitor the effects of that flooding as concerns of mold arises.
We anticipate that the work was done and cleaned up by professionals in this area. And we are going to continue to monitor it to ensure that there's no lingering issues like mold, etc. But the reality of it is that preventative maintenance will continue to be a key part of what the team does at Airport Authority, and not
The flooding was caused by the failure in a fire suppression line. Although there was no disruption in flight operations, the flooding left some travelers and employees walking in ankle-deep water. The Deputy Prime Minister says he is pleased with the quick response by airport officials.
We did have an incident with the flooding at the airport, as you know. These are man-made mechanical fixtures, and therefore sometimes they break. We are consistently looking to see how we can do preventative maintenance. I want to commend the NAD as well as the Airport Authority and Ministry of Tourism and all of the stakeholders for responding very quickly. There was no disruption to service. There was some discomfort, certainly with some arriving passengers between the time of the incident and up to about 1 p.m. But I was pretty pleased that it was handled appropriately.
And finally, in this segment, earlier this week, Ambassador to the United States, Wendell K. Jones, who was also chairman of the Caribbean Caucus of Ambassadors to the United States, representing 14 countries in the U.S., was interviewed in a 3-part series on the PBS show This is America and the World with Dennis Holy. After talking about the geographical location and makeup of the Bahamas, its population, and the Bahamas' relation to Great Britain, Mr. Holy asked Ambassador Jones about Prime Minister Philip Davis and the Progressive Liberal Party's vision for the Bahamas.
Absolutely. The vision for the Bahamas is to provide equal opportunities for all Bahamians, to grow the economy of the Bahamas, so that Bahamians can remain in their country and develop the islands of the Bahamas. He has been a drum major in dealing with climate change issues and believes that we have the carbon sink in the Bahamas to enable us to grow the economy of the Bahamas while we deal with the level of damage that we get from the various hurricanes that pass through the Bahamas. We are in Hurricane Alley, as you probably know. Most of the storms coming off the coast of Africa, many of them end up passing through the Bahamas on the way to the United States, I might add.
As the topic switched to climate change, Ambassador Jones noted that the Bahamas is greatly impacted by hurricanes like Hurricane Dorian in 2019 that caused lots of death and $3.4 billion in damage to infrastructure and property. With Prime Minister Davis currently in London for the coronation of King Charles III, Mr. Holy prompted Ambassador Jones to speak of the Prime Minister's relationship with King Charles in regards to their shared focus on the environment and climate change.
That is an issue that the King has been dealing with prior to taking over from his mother. And he has been very concerned about what is happening environmentally, not only in his country, but around the world. Given what the damages wrought in the Bahamas as a result of hurricanes, particularly over the last 2 decades or so, it is only sensible that our government, led by our Prime Minister, would also take up that same issue.
Noting that while the Bahamas is an independent nation, it is still a part of the Commonwealth of Nations with the British King as head of state. The host asked Ambassador Jones if the Bahamas, like other Caribbean countries, is also leaning towards becoming a republic.
Well, we don't know. It is left to the Bahamian people to decide. These things are decided through referenda. And so there has to be a referendum on the issue of whether or not we are going to move to the next stage of our political development. There is an appetite among some people for that to happen. I don't know if it's the majority, but certainly some people are talking about it.
We'll have more on the 3-part interview in a later report. The next show, This is America and the World with Dennis Holy, will air on WHUT TV on Sunday, May 7th at 10 a.m. And the final episode featuring Ambassador Jones, who is also non-resident ambassador to Colombia and Malaysia, will air on Tuesday, May 9th at 4 p.m. You are encouraged to tune in. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.